Welcome to the first session of OAR for 2021. Today we have a discussion between Dr. Francis Macnab and the Rev Dr Steven Koski, who is an excellent friend and has been for many years for Francis. The subject that they are going to talk about is finding meaning. What makes for a good day? Now that sounds as though it's going to be pretty meaningful to us and hopefully very meaty. And after all of that, I think I'll just ask Steven to get the show on the road. So Steven, it's all yours.
Well, it's great to have this opportunity to be in conversation with you again, Francis. Great to see you. My only regret is I wish this conversation was happening over a fantastic Melbourne coffee. But at least we can talk this way. In your book, in your great book, Aging Well, you talk about how important it is for our mental and our spiritual well-being to think about the concept, what makes for a good day? You know, instead of just kind of getting up and letting the day happen to you, what makes for a good day? And how can you be the artist, I guess, doing the best you can to kind of create that day? I mean, I often think there are some important questions that we can ask every day. Like, where do we see beauty? Where do we find delight? What brings us joy? What are we grateful for? What makes us laugh? Or what are those things that really matter most in life that money can't buy? You, many years ago, actually not that many, but a few years ago, you introduced me to Van Goethe. And I've always loved this quote where he says, a person should hear a little music, read a little poetry, see a fine picture every single day of their life, in order that worldly cares may not obliterate the sense of the beautiful. And I really love that. How do you kind of hang on to that, the sense of the beautiful? And there's a poem, because Van Goethe said everyone should read a poem every day. So that question of what makes a good day, Jane Kenyon is a poet. She died of leukemia right before she turned 47. And not long before her death, she wrote this poem called Otherwise. And whenever I find myself anxious, whenever I find myself maybe in a dark cloud, I go to this poem because it interrupts my anxiety and kind of turns me to gratitude. She wrote, I got out of bed on two strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birchwood. All morning I did the work that I love. At noon I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed in a room with paintings on the wall, beautiful paintings. And I planned another day, just like this day. But one day, I know it will be otherwise. So Francis, I'm curious your reaction to that poem, but I'm curious, what do you think about that concept of what makes for a good day, and how do how do we become the curator, if you would, of making a good day for ourselves?
What is a good day? What is a good day? When I feel happy, when I feel in charge of life.
Mm-hmm.
What is a good day for me? Is it a good day when you can look out and say, this is a day worth living? How will I live it well? What can I do to make it a good day for you as well as for me? So that's my response.
Part of that statement of recognizing this is a day worth living. And I think in some ways that statement you just made is probably how I would define spirituality. Recognizing this is a day worth living. Because I think the spiritual life, if I had to define the spiritual life, it's simply to be awake. I mean, the Bible says this is the day. Not yesterday, not someday in the future. This is the day. Be awake to this day. Also, quite a while back, you introduced me to a poet by the name of Christopher Fry. And you and I collaborated on a small little book of poems once, prayers. And Christopher Fry, this actually quote is this statement, this sentence is quoted in the back of that little book, where he wrote, "It takes so many thousand years to wake, but will you wake for pity's sake?" I mean, Thornton Wilder, the playwright, says, does anyone ever realize life while they're living it? I mean, I love William Carlos Williams, the poet, used to carry a notebook in his pocket, and he would write down things he noticed today that he missed every other day until today. So I love this idea. I love that you said, how can this day be meaningful? Not just for myself, but how can I help create meaning in other people's lives as well? I love Native American spirituality, indigenous spirituality here in North America. And the Navajo teach their children that every single morning when the sun comes up, it's an entirely brand new sun, different from the sun that they witnessed the day before. And they teach their children that the sun is actually born anew every day. And the sun will only live for the duration of one day. And in the evening, it transitions with gracious colors to another world. So the children are told, the sun has only one day. You must live this particular day in a good way, so that you don't take the sacred gift of the sun for granted. You also introduced me to a phrase. Well, you introduced me to Martin Buber, the Jewish philosopher. And I remember, believe it or not, I remember a sermon you preached over 30 years ago. And I remember what you said. I just pray that, I pray that people remember what I say at lunch after the service. So the fact that I remember something you said 30 years ago, but you said, reality breaks new every day. And every day it asks to be shaped by our hands and our hearts. So how do we do that? How do we, how do we stay awake to the gift of each day, not take it for granted, and actually shape the day with our hands and our hearts? What are some things you think that are important to shaping our days?
Believe in the possibility. If you've got a possibility that something new might happen, then you're open to it. But if you close it off and say, it's no good, nothing will ever come of this, you're closed off. But once you say, what's possible? Something new. Every day, it waits to be created anew. How do we do that? Be open to the possibility. The possibility, possibility, possibility. That's a start.
I love that image. I remember the story of an American, very rich person who commissioned an artist to create this painting. This had this huge canvas, and there was a particular bird that this rich American wanted painted. So gave this artist just a ton of money and gave the artist a month to paint this bird. And when the rich American came back, he anticipated this canvas full of colors and this bird and great detail and texture. But there in the corner of the canvas, in just the corner, a small little corner, was the painting of the bird. And the American was furious. I wasted all this money. What's all this blank canvas? And the artist said, that's the space for the bird to fly. And that is that sense of we fill our canvas, we fill our lives, I think, with unimportant things. We fill our lives with negativity. We fill our lives with what we think we can't do. So I love what you just said about what if we began each day with what's possible? What if we began each day imagining that there is this blank canvas waiting for us to put the colors of our life onto that canvas?
Your story of the bird is very, very good, because it can be so small that you can miss it. We didn't see it. Look again, and there is the bird.
Yeah.
And as soon as you see the bird, the whole picture changes. Everything changes as soon as you see, hello, there's a bird up there in the corner. What's it doing? What can it do? It can change the whole picture. It can change our whole perspective of what's going on in front of us in the tiny little corner. There it is.
And I wonder if we miss that bird because we fill our day with less important things. Because I think that the things that are most important are always at the mercy of the things that are least important. I mean, a friend was trying to teach me how to sail, and it was a glorious day out on the water. We got soaking wet though. And so the wind died down, so we stopped to kind of get something to drink and rest a little bit. So we took our shoes and socks off and put our socks over the rail to dry. Now the wind came up and just swept one of my socks into the water. My friend grabbed the other sock and tossed it in the water. I was like, what are you doing besides creating danger for the marine life? But what are you doing tossing the other sock into the water? And my friend said, well, why in the world would you want that one sock? Because life, he said, life is like a drawer full of single socks. Things that you think are important, that somehow you think they're important and you have to hang on to them. But really all they do is clutter up your life. So it seems like in order to answer that question, what makes for a good day? It's important to ask, well, what's most important?
Yes, but do we need two socks to take your image? Do we need both socks? Or will one do? One be enough? Or do we need a sock at all? You see, you can say, well, the socks have gone. Now I've got to walk without socks. Sometimes we can walk a long way without any shoes or socks. Did you know that?
There you are being creative on me. Who would have thought the answer to that question was to look at it from a different angle?
There it is.
Was to break your pattern, to break your habit, and try something new. Have you ever heard the story about the cats? Anthony DeMello tells the story of a cat where this priest had a cat. And they had communion at noon every day. And the cat would create havoc, would meow, would knock over the chalice, and cause just this huge commotion. Well, there's a problem. Whenever there's a problem, you create a solution. So the priest decided, well, let's tie the cat up at 10 minutes to 12 so that the cat won't be an interruption. So this church decided, well, let's study the best rope to tie cats with. And let's study what's the most efficient way to tie up a cat. Let's set up a committee to do the cat tying. So they became so proficient at tying up the cat. It just happened like clockwork. No one thought about it any longer. It became part of what they did every single day. 10 minutes to 12, they tied up the cat. Problem solved. Well, the cat died. The priest loves cats. So they got another cat. So what did they do at 10 minutes to 12? They tied up that cat too. No one asked whether that cat needed to be tied up. Well, the priest moves on. New priest comes in. What do they tell the new priest? Well, one of the really, really important things we do here is we tie cats up. And the new priest says, well, why? And they're going, well, I don't know, but we've been doing it a long time. So I know it's really important. So your question about the sock reminded me of that story of there are things we've been doing for a long time that worked once. And maybe having a good day is recognizing as we age, as life changes, as our context changes, maybe what worked yesterday won't work today. Maybe we have to try something new.
Don't forget your story of the cat included tying him up at a certain time each day. We do that too, you see. This has to be done at 12 o'clock or whatever time. We do it at that time every day. And if you don't do it at that time, everybody's out of kilter. So what do you do then? What do we do when things don't happen on time or in the way we thought they should happen, or that they've always happened at that time each day? So we get uneasy. Something's not going right. What do you do then?
And I'm curious if the question is, are you out of kilter? Or does it open up the possibility, as you said earlier, for something new? I mean, I was just speaking with someone today about, oh, I can't wait until things get back to normal. You know, we get past this pandemic and things get back to normal. And I said, well, one, there are some things about normal that aren't worth going back to. But two, you can't go back. The real question is, how will we move forward? And what will be worth taking with us as we move forward? And what's worth leaving behind? And I think that's an important question in terms of, well, what makes for a good day is that question of, well, what's worth, you asked the question earlier, well, what's worth my energy here? What's worth me investing my energy, and what might be important to let go of?
And the other important question follows. How do I let it go? It's become part of me. It's mine. I put this together. Now you want me to let it go. What happens when I don't want to let it go? I want to hold on to it. I made it. I did it. It's mine. So what do we do then? I can't let it go. How do we let go of the things that need to be let go? What do you say to that?
Oh, I'm curious. I mean, I think there could be many responses, but I'm curious if one response might be to hang on to to reach for and hang on to something more valuable, more important. In some ways, to kind of change this behavior, to let go of this, I need to reach towards something better, something that will capture my heart. I think sometimes we spend so much energy fighting what we are against, as opposed to investing our energy in what we might be for. I think a key question in there is, what's most essential? You know, the Bible says, hold fast to that which is good, to that which is most important, to that which is essential. And I think sometimes we stay stuck and have trouble letting go because we haven't been holding fast to that which makes our soul come alive. I mean, someone told me the story about this nun who was 98 years old and experiencing significant dementia, lived with other nuns in this order for her whole life, decades and decades. Her gift was hospitality. Her gift was welcoming others. Her gift, what made a good day for her, was making sure everyone within the order and any guests would feel welcome. So even though she kind of lost a lot of her other faculties, she insisted that the nuns push her in a wheelchair to the front door every day so that she could greet people as they arrived. So she, even though a lot in her life was lost, what wasn't lost for her was what was most important, most essential, what gave her life the most meaning.
And what was that? What did give her most meaning? Other people.
Yeah.
The other person.
Yeah.
She wanted to say something, as I get your story, she wanted to say something to the other person, recognizing them, acknowledging their presence, accepting the fact that they've got something to say to her, perhaps, or just to be present with her. How to be present to somebody else at a particular moment. It takes a lot of doing, because often we want to talk, we want to do something else. We've got something else in mind, but just stop still for a moment. Stop still and be present to the other person. Indeed, to be present to yourself, so that life is different at this moment because I'm being present to the moment, this moment.
Yeah. Which I think loops back to that definition of spirituality as being awake. Because I think that's another way of defining being awake, is being present. You know, being fully present to this moment, being fully present to yourself, but being fully present to what's in front of you. I think that's what prayer is, to be honest, is to be fully present, so that something is happening, you know, between you and another person when you're fully present.
But since you bring prayer into it, there's something else to be said for that. We're being present to another dimension.
Yeah.
We're waiting on something beyond us, that we might speak to it or about it, or that it might speak to us and to lift us from where we are to the awareness of what we might be, what we might become. That's part of prayer too, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I wonder if it gets back to that question of what matters most. I mean, you and I have had the sacred privilege to spend time with a lot of people as I say, they transition from this life to the mystery of what's next. And I don't know about you, but as I've spent time with people, rarely have I had people say, you know, if I could just drive my car one more time, if I could just go back to work and finish that one project. Now, what they're talking about most of the time, I think, at least that's been my experience, is people, who they love, who loves them. And what I hear most of the time is, if there are regrets, is I didn't forgive easily enough, or I didn't love deeply enough. So it gets back to me, that phrase, the things that are most important, which is being present, which is caring, which is loving, making a difference in other people's lives. The things that are most important every day is at the mercy of all of those things that are least important. So how do we hang on to what's most important?
I think it's important that we do what we're doing now. We listen. See, of all the things we're doing right now, we're listening to the other person. What are you talking about, you see? What are you saying? Do we know how to listen? because often we're so busy or yabbering away ourselves or whatever, listening to a lot of noise, and we don't listen to something that's really alive to us or could make a big difference to us. If only I had listened. I often hear people say that. If I'd just listened a little bit to what you were saying, I wouldn't have done that. If I had listened, things would be different. If I had listened, I'd have heard you say something very important to me. Did you listen? How do we listen?
Paul Tillich, I think Paul Tillich said the first duty of love is to listen.
Right.
I had somebody come into my office not long ago and said, I just don't understand my wife. It's like she lives on another planet. I just have no idea where she's coming from. And I said to him, quit trying. Quit trying. But here's what I want you to do. So quit trying to understand her. But make it your mission in life to make sure she feels understood. Because those are two very different things. Because if I'm trying to understand, I'm not really listening. If I'm trying to understand, I'm really in my head going, does this make sense? Is this right? Do I agree? Is this acceptable? In other words, I'm not listening. I'm kind of reciting something in my own head, so it's about me. But if I have the mission that you feel understood, my posture is different. I'm going, okay, this is what I hear you saying. Is that right? Tell me more. I want to know more. And so I think sometimes the most important experience in life is to feel heard and valued and seen.
I think that often we're so busy wanting to say something that we don't stop to listen. I had a man seeing me at one stage, and he needed me to say something to him. No, I didn't need to, but I thought he needed me to say something. So I kept trying to get a word in edgeways. And eventually he said, would you shut up and listen to me? It was a sober statement. Shut up and listen to me, he said. Oh, so we need to sit back a moment and say, all right, let me listen. What are you saying to me? What do you want to say to me?
Yeah.
What is important for you to hear, for me to hear, whichever. Let me hear it.
I remember when my father died, you get a lot of the cards and a lot of the well wishes of, thinking about you, you're in my prayers, whatever it happens to be. I had one friend who just came by unannounced with a pizza and a 6-pack of beer. He gave me a hug and he said 2 words, or 3 words really. He said, "This really sucks." And then we sat for an hour, ate pizza, drank beer, didn't say another word. That was probably one of the more healing hours I have ever had in my life, because I felt he listened without me having to say anything, because he was present. He was present to my pain. I often feel that we're so uncomfortable with other people's pain that we want to pull them into the light, make them better where we're more comfortable, instead of being willing to crawl into the darkness with them and just sit beside them and listen.
It's good if you can realize that as you're sitting quietly with them, that's like a light being present there.
Yeah.
But if you're gabbling, wanting to talk, wanting to put your word in, the light is extinguished. But to be silent, say nothing. And sometimes the light is shining and you hadn't realized it. Being aware that the light can shine when you're least expecting it. There it is.
Yeah.
That's possible. I know. All right, where do we go from there?
I have another poem, if I might. Mary Oliver, who I love, just adore, because I think this poem to me kind of sums up what we're talking about in terms of what's most important, and being present to one another, and not losing what is essential to us. George Bernard Shaw said, "The true joy in life is being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one." So it's that sense of not losing what's most essential. And so Mary Oliver was in the kitchen with her grandmother, and her grandmother had Alzheimer's fairly significantly. And Mary Oliver was watching her grandmother care for garden ants in her kitchen.
Care for what?
Ants.
Ants.
Little garden ants. And even though her grandmother had Alzheimer's and just seemed to be in a different land, Mary Oliver watched her grandmother care for these ants, and she wrote this poem. It's called Praise of Craziness of a Certain Kind. And she wrote, "On cold evenings, my grandmother, with ownership of half her mind, the other half having flown back to Bohemia, my grandmother spread newspapers over the porch floor. So she said, the garden ants could crawl beneath as under a blanket and keep warm. And what shall I wish for myself? But being so struck by the lightning of years, to be like her, with what is left, that loving."
That's good. How do we find the piece of paper for us all to crawl under for a while? We all need it, don't we?
Yeah.
I think anyway, we all need something like that paper on the floor under which the ants would crawl. We need the blanket somewhere there for us for a time to take our refuge or to renew our strength, whichever. But we need to take a little time to step back from the intensity of the moment or the stress of the occasion to allow us to see that there is a blanket under which we can crawl for a time and be comfortable and find a new way to be there without shouting out, "Hey, come and help me." Just be there. Be there.
It seems to me it kind of loops back to how we began this conversation, where we asked the question, well, what makes for a good day? And you said at the very beginning, don't forget, it's part of what makes for a good day is certainly asking what makes for a good day for yourself, but make sure you ask, how can I make it a good day for someone else? And I think that is what it means to hold fast to what is good. Because to me, in the ugliness that is so prevalent in the air right now, the best form of resistance to that ugliness, I think, is goodness and being good to one another.
Well, it's a symbol of the blanket under which we can crawl for time. The symbol of the blanket is warmth, protection, a time to pause. The blanket has been a symbol for many things, but that's very critical for us to have that symbol in our life where we can say, for a time, I'm going to pull over to the side and rest a while.
Well, your mentorship and your friendship has always been a blanket of encouragement and strength for me. And I'm just incredibly grateful to be able to have this conversation with you. And I can't wait for the next time.
There will be a next time, we hope.
I hope so.
We plan so. Good. Thank you for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Francis. This has been a very, very enlightening discussion, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And a few things that caught my attention were, firstly, the poem Otherwise, which focused on the positives, I thought, but at the end showed that the person was aware of what I've called the inevitable. I like the analogy of the single sock. Do we need one sock, two socks, or no socks? Francis really perhaps put the cat among the pigeons with that little aside. And also that we must hang on to the essentials and be present to the other person. Being present, listening, and then how to make it a good day for someone else. And I think that sums up the intention of, I think, most human beings. So thank you both again, and till next time, cheerio.